beverage. My beverage of choice is Diet Coke. Shh. Cheers. So I've been drinking Diet Coke out of a wine glass for 15 or 20 years. I'm not sure why. I don't drink alcohol. I gave up alcohol years ago. It just wasn't something I wanted to continue once I got on a wellness kick. And so I figure I've saved thousands and thousands of dollars through the years by not purchasing alcohol. I mean, come on, right? Like, how expensive is it to go out? For those of you that go out, right? If you go to a bar, you buy a few drinks, how much do you spend? $60, $80, $100. So again, I figure I have saved literally thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So, I had to set that down on my desk, but I forgot to get something to set it down on, and I didn't want to wake you up or interrupt you as you're falling asleep and watching my video tonight. So again, no hat. It's a little bit later in the day. It's still the same day that I produced Monday's episode, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Like how this works, how do people create ASMR? I'm on a little bit of a roll today. Today is actually Friday afternoon after lunch, and I was gonna jump on my bike and go to the gym, but you know what? I said to myself, maybe you need a little bit of a break today, because remember, I think I told you I'm trying to also work out on Saturday and Sunday to take the place of 2 days during the week where I may go back to work as a contractor with my previous company. I don't know if I'll do that or not, so stay tuned. I will let you know. My former boss reached out to me actually yesterday, and we were chatting via text. And she was like, you know what? If you don't need the money, if you're not bored, and what was the other thing? Don't need money or not bored. There was one other thing. You don't need money, bored. I can't remember. Anyway, she said don't. Oh, unless you really want it, if you're super interested in what you're doing, then of course, then maybe come back. I said no to all three of them. No, I don't need the cash. The cash would be nice though, right? Especially if my condo floods in September of this year, right? I'll need to go get another place. And even though insurance money may pay for it. Anyway, I'm rambling, so don't let me get on that topic. My job is to help relax you. So I do have, again, my trigger of the week. I've got my Band-Aids. And so yeah, today's Friday. I didn't feel like going to the gym. I'll go tomorrow and have a Mother's Day episode coming, but you already saw it. Yeah. So, don't you just love these triggers? In today's episode, I want to continue to relax you, but also to talk about, like, what if you've spent too much money? Like, what then? You know, because Monday I was talking about my own past and how at a very late age in life I finally kind of woke up, right? Got my act together. I like to call getting your act together late in life as just in time personal finance, if there is such a thing. I don't think there is. Hold on. But I did essentially get my act together late in life. It was make it or break it time. But I know there could be many of you right now that are watching that may be watching my videos, and maybe you're thinking to yourself, you know, this is very relaxing, but I really need to look at my own financial situation. Maybe you're in that process right now of waking up. And so, in today's video, I'd like to take a few minutes and talk through, again, if that is you, if you're just now waking up, what are some things that you can do to improve your situation? So number one, the first thing I thought of, I think for most people that are, you know, just waking up, is that my guess would be that you probably have credit card debt that you may want to pay off. So that really would be the first thing, is to try to get that credit card debt paid down as quickly as possible, because my guess is that you may have a negative net worth. Negative net worth. Negative net worth. And the only way to get to zero, in fact, that's what you should be trying to accomplish. You should be trying to get to zero. Let me explain what I mean. If you have a negative net worth, obviously, let's say you have a 40,000 negative net worth, or 50. When I started my investment journey, it was a negative net worth because of the value of this condo, right? I owed a lot of money on the condo still. I had a $100,000 mortgage initially when I bought it back in 2003. But if you have a mortgage, most people say keep the mortgage as long as you can. Don't pay that off right away. You probably want to look at your credit card debt and other consumer debt that you may have and figure out a way to eliminate that debt. You may have to make more money. You may have to look for another job. You may need to get a roommate if you're single and you don't have much wiggle room in your budget. You need extra fluidity, right? You know, one of the podcasts I used to watch or listen to years ago was Paula Pant's Afford Anything. Have you heard of it? Just look it up. I think she's still producing content. It's Paula Pant, Afford Anything. And she used to tell people, and I agree with this 100%, you can afford anything you want, not just everything. Makes sense? So, the first thing again then is to figure out what's important, and the most important thing is to get the debt paid off, and more importantly for most people is to stop the bleeding of continually spending more and more money. You're not going to get anywhere if you pay off that debt, but then you just rack it up again 2 or 3 years later. So on Monday's episode, I told you guys I had a bankruptcy when I was 29 years old. I learned from that experience. It changed who I was. It changed who I wanted to become. But sadly, a lot of people, unfortunately, they go through bankruptcy, end up doing it over again, sometimes twice. They don't learn the lesson that they should have learned initially. So, again, right now, if you've spent too much and you're now just waking up, congratulations. But now it's time to bring that debt down. Now, there is a possibility that you could be bringing debt down at the same time you're bringing your savings and investing up. It's a balancing act. It may be a little bit of a challenge to do both at the same time. Like, for example, I can barely talk and tap at the same time. It's hard to remember to keep my band-aids going, my triggers to help you sleep, while I'm talking about money at the same time. It's a real balancing act. But it's true. You just really have to sit down and look at all of your debt, figure out the interest rates, figure out what strategy resonates with you. Like if you listen to Dave Ramsey, I think he says, look at the balance, because you want those big wins of paying off the smaller balances first, I think is what he says. It's called the snowball effect, because once you pay off one of the debts, then that frees up some liquidity and you put that towards the next larger debt, etc. Other people say, look at the interest rates instead and pay off the higher interest rate first. But you know what? I would say do whatever resonates with you. There is no right way to do anything, in my opinion. Personal finance is personal. If you would rather have the big win and pay off those smaller debts first, then by all means do that. If you're more of a money person and you're becoming more savvy with money, and you would rather perhaps pay the higher interest rates first because that makes you feel powerful, then do that. See, the secret is to do what makes you powerful. Years ago, in 2019, I paid off this condo that you're looking at right now. This is my one and only home that I ever owned. I believed and subscribed in the philosophy of one and done. I made that up. But I said to myself, Evan, you're going to buy one place and you're just going to stay there. You're going to make it work no matter what, which is holding true to this day, even though I'm scared to death of water coming through that window right there in September if a hurricane comes blowing through again like it did last year. Just saying. But that is what I said to myself. One and done. One and done. And what happened was, so I bought this in 2003. It was $100,000. My interest rate was 5.5%. By the time I was a guest on the Susie Orman show in 2012, I wrote into the show and I said I want to continue to pay $600 a month to get this paid off. By the time I was 50 years old, I was 46 at the time. She convinced me to not do that, to refinance, because my amount of money I had in liquid savings was not enough, in her opinion. What if I lost my job? She was right. I didn't lose my job, but what if I did? So instead, I took that money and I put it in a savings account, even though it wasn't earning much interest. And that's the money going forward. And I lowered how much I was sending into the mortgage, I was no longer paying down the principal. And I refinanced at 3.25% for 15 years. Okay, so I went from a 30-year to a 15. See, you've got to be smart with money, right? That was a smart move. However, in 2019, I had a bunch of savings. My job was secure, or so I thought. And I decided at that time, to pay it off. I had $30,000 left over when I refinanced in 2012 with Wells Fargo through the Housing Affordable Refinance Program called HARP through Obama. I owed $30,000 left, and it was refinanced. It was $55,000. Then I refinanced. By the time 2019 rolled around, I only had $30,000 left, and I just sent the money to Wells Fargo and I got rid of it. So everybody's situation is a little bit different, right? Some of you may have homes right now that you may have bought 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You could have tons of equity in your home right now. But if you're just now starting out and you spent too much and you're trying to get your debt paid down, etc., would it be in your best interest right now to sell your place? Maybe. Really think about how much home do you really need. Most people live in homes that they truly do not need. I mean, I'll be honest, like years ago, I was always like, yeah, you know what, I need a 2-bedroom place for an office. But did I really need that? So I always said, no, Evan, stop it. You just want that because everybody says you need a bigger place, right? That's the American way. Bigger and better, bigger, more expensive things. And I just stopped myself and I said, nope, I'm not going to do it. But if you have equity in your home, maybe now would be the right time to sell the home, take the equity, pay down your debt, or use it for something else to build your wealth. You just have to look at things that way. You might have to get a second job. You may, if you have a partner, you may both need to work. You may need to get a roommate if you live by yourself. These are all things that you should do. In fact, Paula Pant, as I was talking about earlier, she did exactly that. When she was younger, in her 20s, I think, when she was getting into real estate, she bought duplexes, I believe. And she would have roommates, right? And other people would pay her mortgage by living in the duplex, right? What a smart thing to do. So you just have to start thinking in clever financial ways to get yourself out of a situation that you may have just woken out of. Does that make sense? You're waking up and you're saying, okay, I'm watching ASMR Money Mentor. You're learning a little bit. You're getting motivated. But then when you wake up the next day after you fall asleep to my videos, you're like, what the heck? Our net worth, or my net worth, is a negative 100,000 or whatever it is. You might be 35. You might be 40 years old. You might be 45 years old. It's time to make changes, and you have to look at it as though it's a game. There's not going to be enough band-aids to perhaps fix yourself. Right? There's only so many band-aids in this box, which is my trigger of the week. I have not heard one jet this entire video. Have you? See what I mean? It's very cyclical. I think I mentioned that in a previous video. People are always like, how can you live in that place? It's so noisy. They make comments on my videos. is it so noisy? Well, you have to remember the microphone. The gain is all the way up, so it's really not that noisy. I hope you're feeling relaxed. And for those of you that are thinking right now, you know what, I really need to look at my money, I will leave you with this. I hope when you wake up tomorrow, you sit down and you figure out exactly what you've got going on with money. Really analyze everything. I have a few episodes in the past where I talk about net worth. Figure out what your net worth is. You may not know. If you're anything like me back in 1994, I was so ignorant with money. I had no idea how much debt I had. I knew nothing about net worth. My family members actually asked me, they said, "Evan, how much debt do you have?" And I said, "I do not know." I did not want to add it up. Credit card of $2,500 here, $3,000 there, $5,000 here. I just was in denial. I didn't want to know what a financial train wreck I had become. So I know there have to be people out there that stumble across my videos, and maybe you're like, "Oh, I'll deal with this next year." And like we talked about in the last episode on Monday, you may be running out of time. You know, you may think, I had to look at my notes, you may think that you have the capacity to figure things out someday, right? Someday in the future, I'm going to get smart with money. And guess what? Someday never comes. And sadly, then you wake up when you're my age, at 59 or 60, and you realize at that point that you want to make changes, but the clock is winding down at that point, right? When you're 50, 55, and 60 is when you should be celebrating the options that you have. And those options would be, do I want to continue to work? Do I love what I'm doing? Do I want that extra money? But you don't want to need the money. You don't want to need the money again, right? You will wake up at that point and be so thankful that you do not need the money. It's a good thing to have, but it's not something that you need. Why? Because now you have an engine that you've created. And that engine, in the form of low-cost index funds or whatever it is, will pay you income just like it does when you're building your wealth. Your investments are continuing to build and build and build, but you're reinvesting the dividends and the interest and everything back into the money. But at some point you start taking from the engine that you've created, and that is the beauty of building financial independence. And so, if you're still awake, give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not done so. And for those of you that are just now waking up, tomorrow and in the coming days, your job is to figure out exactly how much debt you have, how much income you have, what your expenses are, and finally to figure it out and map out a future for yourself, one step at a time. So, have a great night, everybody, and